Hey everybody, this is Keith again. Welcome to Transcendence. This is the Tough Stuff channel, and in this video we're going to be talking about therapy, starting therapy, why to start therapy, why I recommend it, and how to find a therapist. So first and foremost, I do recommend therapy for anyone who is starting to transition, thinking about transitioning, or maybe even just questioning your gender at this point in your journey. Therapy is very beneficial for a lot of reasons, of which I'm about to go over. Therapy is good for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, to help you figure out if you're transgender, if you're still questioning. If you've already crossed that bridge, you know you're transgender, you're about to start your transition, I cannot recommend therapy more than if you're at this step. Therapy is going to help you, especially with a transgender therapist. A gender therapist specifically is what you need to look for. Society is just built in a way that it just shoves people into these tiny little boxes, especially the male box and the female box, and that's it. That's how our society is formed. It gives you almost no flexibility in between. So a gender therapist is going to help you break through those barriers, because that is half of the battle of transitioning, is having to fight all of society around you when it comes to gender norms, and trying to shove people into roles and give them responsibilities based on what's between their legs, which is absolutely ridiculous. Therapy is going to help you overcome pretty much all the brainwashing you've had your entire life on where people fit neatly into a society. Beyond that, therapy is really helpful for when you're coming out. You're going to have to come out to everyone you know. And depending on where you are in the stage of your transition, you're going to have to come out to complete strangers who you don't know. You're going to come out to your entire family, you're going to have to come out to friends, you're going to have to come out at work. If you are transitioning medically anyway, in a way that people are going to notice, eventually you're going to have to explain yourself. Having a therapist in place during all of that is vital. I cannot stress that enough, because I hate to say it, and it's difficult to say, but you are going to lose friends, you are going to lose family. It is different for everybody. Some transgender people are really lucky, and they get to keep their immediate family. Maybe they, have an uncle who's not happy about it, whatever, who cares? But then there's other transgender people who end up, being disowned by everyone they know. It really is very dependent on where you live, the culture in the area that you live. If you're in an urban city, you have higher chances of being accepted by the people around you. If you're in a rural area, maybe not so much. It really is just very dependent on your immediate community, and your relationship with the loved ones around you. I myself was very lucky to be immediately accepted by my wife and my best friend, and my sibling. They were all really awesome, so I would feel like I was one of those lucky people. But I did have a lot of problems with both of my mom and my dad at first when I first came out. I had therapy in place during all of that, which was extremely helpful to me. I don't know what I would have done without it. And then, of course, another huge benefit of therapy, the thing that I see online the most, and the thing people ask me the most online on the forums, is how do I get my HRT letter? How do I start my HRT letter? Do I have to go see a therapist? In most places, the answer is no. You don't have to see a therapist. You don't have to get an HRT letter. For those who don't know, HRT stands for hormone replacement therapy. But a therapist is in a position, a gender therapist specifically, can give you something called an HRT letter that you can then take to your doctor to start hormones, to start your transition. I chose to go this route simply because I knew I would need a therapist. I knew I would need that support. And if I was already going to therapy, it just seemed like the natural step to go ahead and get the letter while I was there. You don't have to take this route. Everyone does it a different way. But if I'm recommending therapy for anyone who's transgender, the letter just kind of goes hand in hand with that, so it makes sense. That again, you don't have to do it that way. Everyone transitions differently. I'm just telling you what worked for me in my area. It is very area based as well. Now, one of my biggest selling points for therapy is that it's going to not only help you through all of the terrible things that you're about to go through and all of the tough times, but it's going to help you focus on the good things that you're going to go through. It's going to help you really zone in and focus on why you're doing this, why you're transitioning. It's going to help you come back to yourself as a person, as a human being. It's going to help you remember that although you're going through this difficult time right now, there is usually an end to it as the transition progresses and you blend more and more into society, if that is your goal. I know that is different for everyone. But if that is your goal, it does get easier the more along into your transition you get. And a therapist really helps you focus on who you are as a person, why you're doing this transition, and just the euphoria that you're going to have when your body finally matches who you have felt that you are your entire life. So it's really good to focus on that when you're going through the hard stuff. Now, if you're watching this video, you're probably already aware of the transgender suicide rate. If you're not, I'm going to talk about that a little bit here. I've read all kinds of different studies. The numbers do vary, but most of them do seem to agree that the suicide rate for transgender people is roughly 50%, meaning 50% of transgender people have attempted suicide in their lifetime. I am one of those people. I attempted suicide 3 times in my life, all 3 of them when I was a young teenager, before I understood what was going on or that I was trans and had no idea why I was so unhappy. And that seems to be a case with a lot of people. But of course, as you can imagine, if there's a support system in place, like loving family members, loving friends, or perhaps a therapist, if a support system is in place, that number reduces dramatically. The studies have shown it can drop all the way down to 10% from that 50% that we talked about earlier. So because not everyone can count on having a supportive family, having supportive friends, having a supportive work environment, what you can count on is a therapist. The therapist is there. They're paid to do their job. They're going to be there for you whenever you need them, and it's guaranteed as long as you're able to provide the insurance or the down payment or whatever it is that they require. So knowing that that is there and that is a constant in your life that you don't have to think about, you don't have to worry about them going away suddenly one day or having a change of heart one day, having that support system there is so important. And I really just implore everybody to look into getting a gender therapist if they're able to. So one more thing to add, I definitely don't want to scare you guys or get you down. I don't want this all to be doom and gloom. So I did just want to remind everybody that that suicide rate that we just talked about, it goes down, pretty much goes away entirely when you transition. So all the studies have shown that the cure for that, for transgender people, is the transition itself. It's to accept yourself as who you are. It is to go ahead and become the person that you've always known that you should be. In my case, personally, I can tell you that I felt the change almost immediately as soon as I started to transition. Previous to my transition, pre-T, I can only really describe it as feeling almost like a ghost. Like I wasn't here. I didn't feel like I was part of the world around me. I felt like when people looked at me, they couldn't really see me. And when I spoke to them, they heard my words, but they couldn't really hear me. It was almost like being half invisible or half dead. Like, it's very difficult to describe to cisgendered people who haven't experienced this. But I'm sure the transgender people that are watching this know exactly what I'm trying to describe to you. After I transitioned, post-transition, all of that went away. Suddenly I felt like a solid person. I was a real person. I felt like I could go around and see things and touch things and talk to people and just, it was such a different experience from what I was living before. And just being in the world as a real person was everything. It was so important. So I did want to just focus on that for a minute, because I feel like a lot of the start of this video was very dark. Okay, I'm going to finish up the video on talking about how to find a gender therapist. If you're in an urban environment or a large suburb, this is going to be pretty easy. Most cities at this point have transition doctors and therapists and all of that in place. So really all you have to do is go to Google gender therapist in whatever area it is that you are in. You put your zip code in, and a whole list of them will probably come up. From there, I do recommend not just picking the first one on your list. I would, click through a couple of names, look into their websites. They should have a professional website. If they don't go to them. B, on that website, they should have a transgender tab. If they're a gender therapist, they're gonna have a whole section on transgender people on their webpage. And then C, they should have a way to be contacted. I highly recommend calling or emailing, or both, several therapists before you ever go in. I found mine by talking to a couple therapists on the phone first before I ever made an appointment. And the therapist I chose, first of all, called me back immediately. Secondly, didn't charge me for the phone call. And thirdly, within 5 minutes, I knew she was the person that I wanted just by talking to her on the phone. Finding a therapist is a very personal thing. You have to feel like you trust the person. You have to feel a connection with the person, or it's not going to do you any good. Because how are you going to talk to someone about your deepest, darkest fears unless you trust them fully 100% of the time? So definitely shop around. Don't pick the first therapist that you see. For my rural transgender friends, it's going to be a little tougher. I know a lot of country areas simply don't have gender therapists. There may just not be one where you live. If that's the case, I always highly recommend making the long drive to the nearest city so you can have an official gender therapist. A regular therapist, they're not going to know how to handle you. I'm just going to come out and say it. I've heard horror stories online about transgender people going to regular therapists, and the therapist doesn't even know how to address them. They don't even know about names and pronouns. You really need a gender therapist for this to get your money's worth, quite frankly. So I do have a lot of associates and acquaintances online who live in rural areas, and the ones that have chosen to make that 3 or 4 hour drive into the city to see a gender therapist, they have not been sorry about it. And quite frankly, because of the pandemic, this may be a lot easier for you guys in the rural areas because everything is telemedicine at this point. So I would call up whoever you're able to find in your nearest city and say, hey, do you offer telemedicine? Most likely in this day and age with the pandemic, they do. So you may not even have to do that 3 or 4 hour drive. You can probably just do it from the comfort of your own living room. So that is basically the end of my recommendations. I hope you guys are all doing well. You can message me anytime with any questions. Have a good day.